Pay defaults establish any standard details you want assigned every time your employee does a particular job. It can make your pay entries faster and eliminate the possibility of not entering the right details for this job. Pay defaults are maintained under Setup, Payroll Details, and Pay Defaults. Pay defaults can be used for a number of reasons. In this sample data, it is a sports business, and they have projects set up for their different tours. So they could make a pay default for each tour, and that would make sure that the right project got assigned when these different employees did the different tours. We're going to click the New button at the bottom and create a new pay default. We're going to call this Grand Lake Tour. And the abbreviation could be shorter. We can do what we want on that abbreviation and name. Any details that you assign in the pay default will override what's in the employee detail. So if the employee has this earning of, let's use the lake fishing, and you wanted a different expense account assigned for when they do this particular tour, then we could put in a different expense account at this point, and it would overwrite what was at the employee level. Or if the project is not assigned at the employee level, then we can enter that particular tour, which is Grand Lake. And the same with department. If it's a department that's assigned for that particular employee, but now they're going to work in a different department when they do this particular job, then you could assign that. But if that doesn't affect a change in any of the department information, then you would just leave it blank. Anything that is left blank in the pay default will be pulling the information from the employee's detail, just like normal if you weren't using a pay default. So we're going to leave the department blank and the work shift blank. We're also going to leave the rate blank. So if you have different employees using the same pay default, it would pick up the rate that's assigned at the employee detail, not a rate here, unless this particular job should be the same amount no matter what the employee's rates are, and no matter which employee is doing it. If it's always going to be the same rate across the board, then you would enter a rate here. But more commonly, you're going to leave the rate blank. And the same situation on tax state, SUTA state. In the workman comp class, if you have employees that work in different workman's compensation classes, then pay defaults is another good way to handle that and make a pay default for your different workman comp classes. So in this case, we have one that's called Colorado Water Sport Guide. And if we have an employee that doesn't have the default of Colorado Water Sport Guide, then this would make the entry for doing the Grand Lake Tour assigned to the Colorado Water Sport Guide how we wanted it. And also on any profit center and location information or production center, you can make any assignments here that would be what you want every time this job is done. When you have all the details you want, then you would click your Save button. There's also additional notes if you want to add some notes of what this particular pay default describes. That would give you some information on that. And we're going to click Save. You can have as many pay defaults as you want. In this case with the sports business, they might want a pay default for every one of those tours so that the right project gets assigned and the right workman compensation class gets assigned every time they do that job. Now let's see how we're going to use that pay default. We're going to go over to Processes and Timesheets. And we're going to pick one of our employees and select that Grand Tour. And you can see that it filled in the earnings account. If you don't see the column for pay default in your entry screen, pay defaults can be used in timesheet entries or in workgroup timesheet entries or directly into a pay employees in the enter pay tab. But if the column is missing for pay default, then just right click on the blue row, select add remove columns, and check the box for pay default. It might be down lower for you. In this case, while we're in the displaying columns, we're going to add a column for project and workers' compensation class so that you can see what happens when we use this pay default for the Grand Tour. It filled in our project of Grand Lake and our workman's compensation of Colorado Water Sports Guide, even though that the default workers' compensation class for George is not the Colorado Water Sport. Let's give him another, whoops. That left. Okay. Oh, we have to enter in how many hours here. So we're going to give him some hours. It was 8 hours, and it's on a piece rate. So we're going to do 4 tours. I gave him some information there. We're going to go to the next line, skip the Grand Tour, and this time we're just going to do a road biking. And another 4 hours and 3. And you can see here that it brought in his default workers' compensation class of bike tour guide because it wasn't overwritten by the pay default like our first entry for Grand Lake Tour to Colorado Water Sport Guide. So it is helping you get the right information in every entry by using the pay default. And again, those pay defaults can be used in timesheets, in your work group timesheet entries, and directly in your pay employees.